Hi, I'm Alicia,
I'm Haley.
and I'm a second-year grad student at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, studying visual communication.
And I just graduated this spring. I majored in photo and video journalism.
And we're together because we're working safely on a doc project for the next 3 weeks on USPS. So we're starting that tomorrow. Otherwise, we would not be in the same place. But now we're attached at the hip for a little bit. So we're going to go through our presentation, which is, pardon our humor.
It's really bad.
Yes. So some things we're going to go over is resources for the editing process that we find really useful, as well as creating your own career and just really what that encompasses. This is what we've learned and just our opinions, but not, obviously there's so much more you'll learn in your own experiences, and it's not one way or one shoe size fits all or anything.
Definitely. Yeah, that's just our disclaimer. This is just what we found that works, and we're not experts, but this is just our tips and tricks. Also, just so you know, if you guys have, if we're talking about something like here, we're going to talk about transcription services. If y'all have any that you like and recommend, feel free to drop them in the chat for everyone, as well as your Instagrams. You can do that whenever, because, we love to connect.
Yeah, definitely share your Instagrams. It'd be awesome to stay in touch, and any other tips you have that you think would be useful for the entire group today.
So I guess to start us off, transcription services, those are super duper important when you interview people and you want to go back. We're taught a process where you interview someone and then you have that audio file and you can put that onto one of these sites and it'll give you a okay-ish transcription of it. So it'll type out everything that everyone says, and then you can go back and make selects and then edit what words they might have gotten wrong. So here's some ones that we recommend. Otter.ai has, I think, the most minutes you can get for free. HappyScribe is good if your interview is in a different language or has a strong accent. The other ones are pretty bad about accents, which is really unfortunate. But these are ones we recommend. There's also, I've heard, ways to do it on YouTube and also Google Docs. If you do voice to text, you can just play your recording. But these are the ones we found that works best. And as, lowly college students, I've made a bunch of emails just so I can get free trials, which I guess I'll eventually pay for it. But these are the ones we recommend.
I've paid for Temi once, and it's like $7 for, say, an hour and 15 minutes of interview. And the best part is you can highlight within the service, and it only exports your highlights with those timestamps, and it doesn't group together timestamps. It separates them very well depending on what you highlight. So that's really important when you're going into your radio cut. Extremely helpful.
Next up, we have file transfers. So, as a photographer, videographer, whether it be a client or a friend, you're going to want to send them photos without taking up a whole lot of space. So we use WeTransfer a lot in our daily lives, and so you can send up to 2 gigabytes for free. You can send either a link or an email, and the thing is that you have to emphasize to whoever you're sending it to is that it does expire in 1 week. If you use the email, it will send them notifications like, oh, your files expire in 2 days, but for the link it doesn't do that, so just make sure that they know that. But it's really, really helpful and cleans up your email and your text messages so it's not bogged down with all of your images. And then Handbrake is something I heard about last year, and I've used it frequently to downsize video files when I'm sending them. So it's an online application that you can download, and it compresses video files, and you have specific settings that you can adjust and that sort of thing. And then I think the next slide is screenshots just to show you. So for WeTransfer on the left, the default thing is just to add your files or select a folder from your computer and then put their email address, your email address, a message if you want. But then if you click on the little ... button, it'll give you the option to also send it as a link. And then this is just what Handbrake looks like. It looks kind of not official. I haven't had any problems, but don't blame me, but I'm pretty sure it's fine.
Yeah, it's pretty well known. People use it a lot, so so far so good. These are some music suggestions.
Okay. So the one we use a lot in the journalism school is Free Music Archive, and that's just a great resource. So obviously you can sort by the genre, the musician, the copyright status of it, which is really important. And it's pretty great. And these are the, underneath the bullets, those are people that we love. Poddington Bear is my personal favorite. Love Poddington Bear. But there's also Triangle, Vortex, and Chris Zabriskie. So those are really great ones to start with. And just a tip, I think this might be on the next slide, but once you start downloading music, even if it's just for one project and it's a really quick turnaround, make sure you save that music all in a folder, because later down the road you'll be like, I need some music. Here are the options that I didn't use, but I really want to remember. So it's really important to have that organization and have a big music folder.
You call it like your video assets, and you can have kind of like filters that you're putting on top for an antique feel, and then you can have music and just like keep that kind of on your hard drive ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Another resource, which I haven't used too much but is pretty great, is the YouTube audio library. And this will all be linked in public later, but it's called the audio library channel, and it shows you what you can use for free on YouTube. And then if you're using it outside of YouTube, just make sure that it has the Creative Commons license and make sure you're, crediting it appropriately. And then do you want to talk about Epidemic Sound?
Yeah, I love Epidemic Sound. I worked with Lucas Pruitt a couple times this last year, and we were a big fan of it. We used it for both of our docs we made together. And the only thing is when you release it publicly, you'll want to be in your trial period, or you need to download or purchase like 1 month. That's sort of their copyright credited. You just need to have an active account when you release the doc. So we paid for 1 extra month since we had the trial while we were editing, and released it under that time. So that's kind of a way around those. And then we canceled it after that.
Yeah, one of the biggest things is, as artists, it's really, and just for legal reasons, it's important to give credit. So make sure you figure out how to do that appropriately. Usually on Free Music Archives, it tells you exactly how you should credit it. Also ask friends, at least at UNC, I know I was told to ask my professor, ask a couple of the upperclassmen, because they do have those music folders on their hard drive, and they've been more than willing to share, and you just pass the music along and you have that folder and you can add to that. And then if not, just start your own. And I think it's really important to make that a collaborative, because it can be intimidating and not all music is good. And then another thing just to consider is how you're using music. At least with documentaries, we're taught to, music can be a character, and if you want it to be a big character, then you need to consider that. But as a default, I usually lean towards more drone or instrumental music instead of like a really sappy piano or violin or anything like that can be, one, just sound cheesy, and also influence the listeners or viewers' emotions a little too much,
Yeah, I think that summarizes it. So we want to talk a little bit about how every career path is unique. While this is like a video documentary workshop, just thinking about where video fits into the world and which industries, there's so much that's overlapping. And I've spent a lot of my summer, we were supposed to be working on a grant together in Alaska, and just due to circumstances we're not doing that. So I spent a lot of my summer networking and talking with people on the phone and taking webinars and everything like that, and realized the overlap between advertising, commercial, film festivals, documentary, feature is not as different as we think. And a lot of people are freelancing and contracting with multiple companies. And I think that's really hard to get into. What I've learned is it's mostly word of mouth. And a lot of production companies aren't listed on Google very widely because they have the people that they know they go to. So just thinking about how maybe, if you work for an agency, you could be doing documentary work, because there's a lot of agencies leaning toward that direction now. If you work for a corporation, thinking about maybe there's ones that you really love their mission, and being a content creator for them can involve documentary work too. So keeping a list of companies you really admire. Maybe you want to work for a foundation that's giving grants to documentary filmmakers, or a nonprofit that's inspiring youth to work in documentary and storytelling. So just knowing that your path is unique, and you don't need to go work for, the number one paper that everyone wants that job and be disappointed when if you don't get it. Definitely still strive for your dreams, number one, but just keep your options open and your mind open. So we're going to talk about some of the things we've learned with exploring these paths. And the first thing we'll talk about is resumes. So one tip that a lot of people might already know, but is to quantify your accomplishments using action verbs. So making sure you're saying, like, I published 10 articles. So I like to keep a list on my notes app of just things that I feel like I'm doing as I do them in a company, or for like freelance work, I'll just kind of say like their social media increased by this much, and I'll make sure I'm constantly thinking about those things, at least periodically. So you're not looking back like 2 years later and thinking, like, what the heck did I do? Because you're always doing a lot. Like, how many articles did you publish? And like always having a list of all those published articles, maybe on your like resume that's longer, and then you have a tailored one that's way shorter. Yeah.
You pretty much said that's good. A lot of stuff that I learned, I actually took a career prep class, so shout out to Professor Livis Freeman at the UNC. So he was one of the ones that really emphasized this for me, and like the importance of quantifying your accomplishments. Because yeah, you could say like, oh, I worked on the social media team or did this, but then when you are able to articulate exactly your impact, it shows that you have that critical mindset, but it also gives them like it validates what you're saying a little bit more, and it grabs their attention. I guess, yeah, you want to go to the next point?
Sure. So one thing that can make you stand out in a creative industry is your design. So we'll show you both of our resumes, but also just not to be too over the top with your design, and know that like it fits in some applications, but not in others. A lot of websites will use like application tracking processes, and so they'll just be looking for keywords. And if that's the case, I would submit a Word document versus like a PDF of an Illustrator designed resume, because you're going to want that tracking system to be able to pick it up like best. So just knowing where that fits. Like if you cold email someone, definitely put in your beautiful designed resume. And so with this, I think some of the things that I leave out too is like your references. I wouldn't put that on a resume, just from what I've learned, because once you get to the interview process, they'll ask you for it, or if you're selected for an interview, or if that's on their job application website, it'll be separate. Also like bars that show how skilled you are in things, just knowing like how that looks and making sure it like makes you look very good but not braggy. So like knowing where you fall in categories and which ones maybe you shouldn't leave out if you're having those types of graphics. And then you can tailor the resume to that specific job if it's going through that applicant tracking system. So looking at the job description and adding those keywords onto your resume, especially the job title, like just making sure it's there. If it's producer, making sure you've done production before in some capacity, at least on your resume. Yeah, so we'll share ours. And this is mine. I don't know if you can see it well here. I'll just make this big. So this is on my website. It's just a PDF, and I designed it in Illustrator. And something I just really wanted to keep consistent with it being designed was columns. I thought it was helpful to like keep the scope of abilities on the left and all my work experience on the right. Having like your info and your link to your LinkedIn with a URL, having your portfolio and just that contact information really like front and center. The skills that I put, I just like elaborate on what I know how to do. I know it's like, I might eliminate some things for certain job applications versus others, or emphasize them. But then also education, you can put it near the top if you want to, or work experience can go above it. I feel like that's personal preference. And then just those examples of like action-oriented sentences I try to have, making sure everything's like aligned and similar and follows that strategy, but you know, just like procured instead of wrote grants, something that's very like, it was successful, and I tried to keep Like I said, just examples of how many things happened. Like this, for example, I did have to like go back and count or at least estimate. But yeah, with social media and strategy, you can kind of keep those analytics to like separately, probably do them for the company. But yeah, that's an example of mine. And then Haley also has hers here. Let me know if you can see this. I think I need to share another part of the screen actually. New share. That one. Okay, I think that works.
Oh dear. So this is my resume. Pretty much a lot of what Alicia said. Because I'm a recent student, I put my education kind of close to the top, but I think it really depends where you're at in your career and what you're feeling. Another thing, I don't know if this is common practice, but because you're sending this a lot as a PDF, if it's an online application that, you know, does autofill and that sort of thing, that's a different story. But I like to hyperlink certain things just so it's really easy if they open it up. So like this will take you to my website, my Instagram, email, LinkedIn, and then the skills, and then also these projects are hyperlinked, so it'll take you to the website that they're on. I don't know, I just feel like a lot of jobs you have a million applications and they're not going to give your resume more than 10 seconds, so having everything there is pretty important. Yeah, and then I think if you're in the creative industry, it is good to make it a little more creative to show that, but also you never know who's going to be watching it, and so I've always been told to err on the side of readability and a little bit less all over the place, but it really depends, I think, on the company and who you're getting at the company.
Yeah. Are there any questions so far on what we've covered as I find the next screen share? Zoom technology. All right.
We're so good.
All right. Back here.
Wait, does that icon mean we have a chat notification? Also, we can't really see the chat, so if you're messaging us, Emily or Hannah, feel free to yell and say.
We got a question asking what you used to design the resumes.
Yeah, so I used Illustrator. InDesign's also great, and that's just an Adobe product through some schools, and you can get Adobe services for free. But if you're like with a nonprofit, you can also get a really good discount. It's very expensive if you're an individual. So I know there's other services out there that would be better to design it on.
I used to have mine on Illustrator, and then I got really paranoid about the readability when I learned about how bots are like scanning for keywords. And so I actually transitioned to Canva, which, you know, it's Canva. It's pretty great though. And so I just customized that a little bit more, you know, made sure to add my logo and customized it, and I think if you're in the creative industry, it's important not to just use the first template you see and like sort of make it your own if you're able to, but that's also just my personal preference.
Canva's really good. Yeah, so the cover letters, what we're going to talk about next. This is like,
I hate cover letters. Alicia's going to talk all about this because I'm awful at them.
I think they can be magic. Like you can be, you know, have a system. And so this is just what I do, but it's not what you have to do. But so I think every cover letter tells a story about the specific job you're applying to. The format that I go with is the first paragraph has like a bold sentence about you and what makes you different. Maybe it's like an example of a work experience you had that really changed your perspective or your life, and how that company fits into that mission of yours. So maybe defining what your mission is would be really helpful, like as an individual, and then kind of saying X company, for example, like we'll just use Patagonia's mission of upholding standards that protect our environment and upholding like society and governments accountable, like aligns with the mission I hope to, or the impact I hope to have on the world, and like something like that. And like, that's why I'm applying for this position. The second paragraph, I try to be really complimentary, like just making sure I've looked at their website, explored their work, complimented a campaign that I really liked, like what about their brand identity I admire, and calling them like bold and courageous, and like, and then citing those specific campaigns just, I think, makes you stand out and makes them like blush a little bit. And then the next sentence, you kind of say like why you want this position because of those types of campaigns. But these are both really short paragraphs, like definitely not a lot. The third paragraph is what skills you have that make you great for that position. So if it's like a production position, I would want to talk about, you know, the experience some of us students had going to Belize and how we had to prepare for that. And or if it's a design position, I might talk about some freelance projects or brand identities that I had done, but not all of your experiences, probably just 3 sentences, and being specific to that job. And then the fourth paragraph is really just like details about your current situation if you need to add them, like are you going to move where they are? I don't always put this, but I do leave addresses off the resume. So if you're not located there, maybe just citing like I plan to move to New York and like would be honored to have the opportunity to work alongside blank team. And then I always like under your salutation, put your phone number, portfolio, and email again. That's just like a system I use, and it makes it really easy because you can kind of duplicate this over and over, and it's not the same cover letter, but it's I think it's pretty easy. Cover letters still suck. So networking.
Woo, we'd love to see it. So networking, there's a really great website that I think some of y'all are already in. It's called Photography/Multimedia Internships and Jobs, and it's this Facebook group, and there's a bunch of job postings like the title says, and it's just been really helpful. A lot of the internships I applied to during undergrad were from there, and there's people you can reach out to, and it's just great. So basically you can look that up, or you can just friend me on Facebook, Haley France, HALEYFRANCE, and send me just a message saying, hey, add me to that Facebook group you talked about, and I'll make sure to like accept that I know you and you can come in. I think if any of your friends are in it, they can admit you, but it's really, really great. And then
yesterday I did a portfolio review over Zoom with someone from like documentary ad agency. It was really great. It was like this free opportunity through one of the advertising student groups, I guess. But they told me about this great website called workingnotworking.com, and it's basically LinkedIn for freelancers, but creative professionals. And once I looked at it, I was like, oh, wow, we should all have these, because it states like kind of what you do. Like if you're a cinematographer and a producer, and like maybe you are a director, like those are roles you often fill, you would have those in your title. And then once they go to your page, it's like all these links to your work, like links to your photography. It looks really great. It's like a portfolio book. It's just not as many words as LinkedIn, so kind of wonderful in that way. And it seems like a lot of people get hired off of there. So I think that'd be good to make a portfolio for like including myself. I was like, I should probably do that. And that portfolio review is another great way to just like get feedback. And I know those exist out there if you search for like free portfolio reviews from just whoever, whether it's an editor or someone in an agency. Those are pretty great. Requesting like LinkedIn virtual coffee chats, since the world is virtual now, it kind of benefits us because you can much more easily get the attention of someone in New York and talk to them for 30 minutes. And if you're able to like connect over Zoom and just share similar interests and be complimentary of their work, that can go really far for them putting a good word in for you if you end up applying for a place in New York or an agency or a production team or freelancing. And then another resource from our school is Husband Connection. So if there's any UNC students here, our career center just established that with a lot of alumni that are very willing to talk to you and network.
You should have gotten an email about it maybe a few weeks ago, but it's a great resource, and it's just people who have agreed that they're open. You just send them a message on LinkedIn and mention this, and they're really more than happy to talk, which is awesome because we have some pretty great alumni. And then this next thing is just a really depressing stat that I was told in my career prep class. For every 60 job applications, it's roughly 1 interview, which is really sad. But don't worry, we're all in this together, and we have networking, which I was very stubborn and didn't want to do for the longest time because it sounds awful, but it's actually great. You get to meet a lot of new people, and I think there's ways to make it enjoyable for you instead of it like being this very big, scary thing.
Yeah, especially when you connect to someone, it seems pretty awesome to be like, I had the best conversation with this editor at blank magazine just because you wanted to know more about their work. You weren't applying for a job, and that's really cool. LinkedIn, just a few things.
Yeah, another thing that you can do on LinkedIn, this might be common sense for some of y'all, but you can actually change your URL on there. So instead of it being like linkedin.com/HaleyFrance564379, I don't know, it can be -/Haley-France. And so you can actually customize that in your settings. So it looks a lot more professional when you're sending that to people or when you have it on your resume. And then another thing, for the love of God, I've seen this on, I don't know, this is just me being rude, but if you don't have the default background header, like change it to, if you're a photographer, something simple, you have the design eye, you can do it. But yeah, just get rid of that default header. It looks like I don't know, people take it the wrong way. And then, yeah, just make sure, sort of what we were saying earlier with the resumes, you want to make it really easy for whoever's reading it. So make sure you have links and examples of your work all on there so you can just really quickly click to those.
Yeah, and then keywords, just if you find like 5 job applications of jobs that you want or eventually will want, making sure you have those keywords that are in those applications on your LinkedIn, because LinkedIn seems to be like very hard to get a job through LinkedIn, but at least if someone's searching for applicants, it would make you more likely to appear. So if you like want to be a producer, you should probably have producer in your title, even if that's not what you are currently. Like maybe you're a MA candidate at the University of Chapel Hill, like me, but if I want to be a producer, I was told yesterday, like I should put this in my title because if I want to be searchable for that job, I need to say like creative producer. And so that's just a little tip that someone told me, and I think like really resonated. You can also ask your friends for skills endorsements and recommendations. It makes you a lot more searchable. And then just really legitimizing the connections you have, like searching for people that are in industries that you want and just sending them a note and saying, I really admire your work and would love to connect, because all those connections can help your searchability. And
Sure. So interviews, yay, you made it. You got it. Interview. Great job. So 9 times out of 10, the first thing they're going to ask you is, tell me about yourself. And so I think it's really good to have like a minute or so, something prepared. It doesn't have to be like you're repeating something from your mind. It's like a script, but I think it really is good to have that sort of personal branding statement thought out. And not just repeating your resume, but touching on other connections and what you're working on now, and just give them a feel about your personality and your experience, but in a fun, concise way. Behavioral questions. So sometimes you'll be asked like, oh, what do you do in the situation? And there's a couple different methods. This is just one of them that the career prep people tell you to do, but it's really helpful because it makes you think like, one, you want to think about the problem they just proposed for you to fix. So talk about that out loud. What actually are they saying? What issues you have to fix during this? And then you want to talk about the actions. What action steps are you going to take? And I think it's important to be specific so they can see how you think. And then you want to talk about the result and what you learned. And I don't know, I think they just want to see your thought process and make sure you're being thoughtful with that.
And keeping in mind, like, all of this could also apply to a virtual coffee chat. Like, you want to come prepared with, when someone says, what's your dream job? Like, you just want to know what your dream job is and why. When someone's like, tell me about yourself, you want to have, like, not stumbling over those words. So it's just good to practice with your friends or, like, anyone to get that down. But not, you don't have to memorize it. Just know what you want.
And there's, like,
no, go ahead.
There's lists online, too, with, like, the most asked questions, which I think is good just to practice. So you just don't, not rehearse, but, so you don't stumble over your words and you have specific experiences you can draw from if you get nervous.
Yeah, and then researching beforehand, whether you're talking to someone for 30 minutes online or going in for an interview post-COVID, knowing like 2 of those projects that they've done that you really like and having them in mind and why you like them and maybe like how you would take them even further, or, what type of work you think you would see yourself being involved in at the company. Just like knowing the company well. And then sending a thank you, like just super important and really great.
Also, this is another thing everyone will probably already know, but if they ask if you have any questions at the end, which they will, you better have a question. Like you just, the same thing with thank you note. You always send a thank you note and you always want to have a question at the end.
One that I feel like is really like easy and go-to is like, I mean, you can always ask someone like what their favorite project was that they worked on and why, or like where you see the industry going in the future based on X changes that are happening currently, like COVID, or I don't know, just things like that. Obviously, I mean, I'd be curious about that anyway, so definitely works as like a go-to question. This is pitching, and Haley and I were doing this recently for this project that we're going to work on right now, so we figured we're not experts, like it's super hard. I think it's hard for anyone, whether you're experienced or not experienced, but these are some of the tips we got from people we were asking for help. So when you pitch, having like a catchy subject line is really great, instead of just saying video pitch or article pitch, or even like the topic, like environmental pitch, but instead saying like Duke Energy's polluting blank communities, lakes, like, and then in parentheses, you'd put like video pitch or photo pitch, or like article pitch. So they're like, oh, I did want to know more about Duke Energy pollution. And, you know, it's not just like pollution pitch. Yeah. So just being catchy and eye-grabby, but not spammy, like not like a lot of numbers and stuff. And then the next thing, obviously, like just being formal to an extent. I do have a friend that goes like, hello, exclamation point, and that's her personality. And she's actually really successful doing that. So maybe whatever works for you. I usually use dear to not be like really gendered. Instead of like Miss or Mr., I just say dear first name. And then the next thing that we learned was like having what section of the publication it would work in, like, and why. So if you're pitching, like we sent this current project we're working on to AARP magazine, which is, you know, like multi-generational, but mainly for people over 60. But within that magazine, they have like history, culture, tech. So just knowing what section you're actually pitching to, if one person's accepting pitches, or there's like photo editor, knowing where you want to see that and why. Another thing that you can include in your like short pitch by email is details of that current topic with links. So say if you're like talking about maybe how COVID has impacted Paralympic athletes, like you would want to make sure you're including who's been talking about the Olympics right now, when it was canceled, how many like Paralympians live in the area that you're going to report on, and what they're doing, and have links to maybe their personal websites, have links to the articles about the Olympics and what's happening. Like show that you haven't just thought of this idea and haven't done any research, but are already experienced in this topic, and that they can trust you with working for them. And why it's important today. Like if there's already been a ton on that topic in the news, like why do you need to do more? And then sharing your personal relevant work that applies to that subject. So like if it's an environmental pitch and you have a documentary about the environment, like sharing that documentary instead of sharing the documentary you did last year about like food, or I guess food is environment, but sports. Just making sure that it applies, and maybe linking directly to that page on your website instead of linking to your entire website. I think that just helps them see the right thing quickly and buy into who you are. A friend also told me to, you know, tell them about you in one sentence. That's like awards and notable bylines. I don't have a lot of notable bylines, and I don't have a lot of awards. So I would kind of just like say my personal mission, and, you know, if it feels important to say like recent graduate, you could say that, but you could also just say like video journalist exploring how culture intersects with blah, 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 and like leave it at that. So just telling them about you a little bit more. And then again, adding like phone number, email, and website at the bottom. So like even if you've linked it above, knowing that they can go back and see it really fast. And if it's free, like if you're wanting to get published and you're literally giving them this piece of work for free, just state that, like state it free video pitch, because we've heard from a couple of professors that like someone will greatly accept free work, especially if they like it. But if they have to pay you $600 to $1,000 to do it, they probably won't over the next like great journalist that was just laid off too. So it's like just knowing if you want it to really be accepted, maybe you do want to do this project for free, but the next one you want to get paid for. So it just depends. This is a link to a list of publications currently accepting pitches that we saw rolling around, and it's a really great resource, even just to see like what publications exist out there. I didn't know a lot of these magazines, and their editors often like people, it was like sourced content from a bunch of journalists. So like it's emails that journalists got saying what the magazine's currently doing and what they're accepting, which is really helpful. Do you want to talk about this?
No.
Okay. We like kind of explored film festival submissions recently, so we figured we'd talk about this from like a student perspective. Filmfreeway.com is where you would upload your documentary project, feature film, etc. As a project, and then detail it, and then you'd apply to certain festivals through this website. It's like the only website used for festivals. Every festival costs money, which is the sucky part of learning about this. Schools like UNC don't even give out funding to help you apply to festivals, which would really just further your career and be great networking. But some of the entry fees are like $20. So if you feel competitive for the student categories or the short documentary categories or any category, definitely submit it. Also heard recently about a friend who volunteered for festivals for 2 years. She was at Sundance, and like, of course she met a ton of great people and was volunteering for free, but that type of networking experience could be really invaluable. And then one thing that we just wanted to add here was using your coverage plan to create these kind of proposals. So if you're applying for a grant, making sure like when you start a project, you're utilizing a coverage plan that you had made when you did that project. So, or like when you start a project, you create a coverage plan. So that would be like where you're going to go and why, your timeline, your budget, your shot list, the themes and emotions that you want to convey through this project, the characters, the story partners you want to work with, why, and really like a 25-word sentence about the project and then a long description about the project. And if you do that in the beginning, like you'll be set to really easily curate these grant proposals. Types of proposals that are really awesome are like finishing grants for long-term docs. So one of our friends recently just premiered a doc she had worked on all year, but she still wants to finish it. So like that was just something that we had thought of, where she could apply for like $3,000 more just to, you know, travel to the place that she would be working on it, her own time, her editing costs, anything that she might accrue during that time to finish that documentary. Below is Amy Vitale, a UNC alum and National Geographic photographer, her resource list that has every single grant you could possibly think of. It's really cool. So when we have access to, or we can share this with you, or you can reach out to us, but also on the PowerPoint, it's there as a link. There's of course more stuff.
So another great way to network, especially as a student when there's a bunch of student discounts, is conferences. One that I've gone to a couple years was the Atlanta Photojournalism Seminar, which, you know, with COVID, a lot of them are getting moved online, so be on the lookout for that. But in a normal world, you are able to volunteer at that conference too, and you can apply to be a volunteer, which is great because your admission fee is waived, and you also just make so many more connections. And then there's also webinars and things going on now. CPOY was holding a bunch of like smaller production companies.
Photographers Without Borders.
Yeah.
NPPA as well.
It's really great. And like right now, a lot of them are being offered for free, which is, I guess, the plus side of, you know, an awful situation. And so that's been really, really amazing. And portfolio reviews, that sort of thing.
No, I think that's it. Yeah, just keeping your eye out for like what's out there, like Eddie Adams Mountain Workshop. Of course, they're not happening this year, but knowing that like up to 2 years after your graduation, you can apply to those things.
I think they're virtual. But yeah.
Oh yeah, virtual now. So you can still apply, but just knowing that those would be such a great space to not only get feedback and network, but really just like make meaningful connections with people too.
Mm-hmm. And then competitions, if that is your route, which, you know, it's not for everyone and rightfully so, but that is also if you're able to afford the admission fees and get funding for that. There's a couple really great ways to get your work out. There's, you know, of course, Hearst, CPOY, White House News, Press Photographers Association. Yeah. That's wrong. One of those things. BOP. Yeah, so just keep your eye out for that. There's some great student categories and obviously the professional categories, but the student categories definitely has a smaller pool, which is amazing. Gets your name out there and that sort of thing.
In our classes, our professors often ask for like 50 story ideas when we start class. But something that I think is just constant, great practice is like keeping a story list on maybe your notes app on your iPhone or any phone, or like in like an actual notebook you carry around with you. But like if you are walking around, like we're in Austin, Texas right now, and there's this like guitarist just walking around and sitting at the bus stop, and like maybe it reminded you of like musicians in Austin and how they're getting through COVID, or, you know, like how they're performing maybe in more public spaces now, or I don't know, like maybe that's just an idea you had, so you should probably write that down. If an editor ever, like if you ever connect to someone, they're like, what's a story idea you have right now? Like you just want to think like at least be thinking about it, that you're like, you have one on hand or something you've always wanted to pursue. And another suggestion is just like to keep a long-term personal project going. A lot of these like amazing docs that we see are like 10 years in the making and stuff, and didn't like start right off the ground running. They like started as kind of this project someone just did. Maybe it's like on food justice systems in Chapel Hill, and, you know, they were like casually working on it, but it wasn't really like finished. And then it got like a big event happened. So then it got a little bit more intense, and then they got funding, and 10 years later you have this like amazing doc. So just continuing to like pursue a project you're just passionate about.
And then Twitter and Instagram, great ways for visual artists and I guess, you know, journalists. Twitter has been really great. Alicia was saying that there's a lot of editors on there who will let you know when and where they're accepting pitches, and then a great way to connect on there. I'm more familiar with the Instagram route. I'm not very active on Twitter, but maybe I should be.
But it's a good way to just stalk, like even if you're not active, just to like, if you hear about an editor's name, to look them up there, because they will say like accepting culture pitches or accepting some pitch. Maybe it's NYT or the Atlantic, or, you know, something big that you're like, oh, I have no idea how to get in touch with them, and they might put their email there sometimes too.
Mm-hmm. And then Instagram is great. A lot of photographers, Hannah is amazing at this, so Q&A, interrogate her, but she's so great at reaching out to people, and photographers and whatever you're interested in. Videographers have been so great about answering like even Instagram DMs and talking about things. And so I think you shouldn't, like in this day and age, I don't think it's uncommon to shoot your shot in that way.
And just be collaborative. Like you're sharing their work, you know, it just goes a long way to like establish community and support one another. And then this is a list of job boards that obviously we'll share the presentation afterward, to not go through them all. Some of these are like really design related, actually, like agency at the top, and then like the ones below are very well known, like Inside the Newsroom, really like real-time updated photojournalism and video and writing positions all over the world. And then just a couple other things for students, like the Google News Initiative or young professionals that we listed here. Yeah.
Woo! So we'll be actually looking at the chat now, I think. Also, we discovered through this process that we both look creepily similar as kids. I'm on the right and Alicia's on the left, and it's really concerning. So, yes.
The resources list are not showing up. Is there a way to cover these? Which resource list? Wait, let's see. Maybe we need to go back. The only list that we really provided is this job board one. The rest of the resources were just linked, so maybe they're just not appearing because they're all like linked. So Amy Vitale's here is just a link. So when this presentation is shared, you can go to these pages. You can also Google this and or go to her website. But if you don't do that immediately, it will be shared later.
Yeah. Also, you have our contact information now, so feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
And everyone drop your Instagrams if you all want to follow each other. Super fun.
Yeah. Let's see, any other questions? Oh yeah, the pitches list too, same situation. It's actually like a secret Google Doc. So when we share this presentation, or like literally I can do it right now, to make sure you get it right now. Let's just see. It's here. I'll put it in the chat. This is like publications. It's called publications that have cut freelance budgets, but it's literally a Google form. But it lists publications that are still accepting pitches too. So I felt like that was helpful. And sometimes it has emails for editors, which is kind of cool. But yeah, lots of publications. Like literally I was like, oh, I forgot like Southwest Magazine is obviously that's not something I would pitch to right now, but is a thing. Or like, I don't know, I think it'd be kind of curious, like maybe these companies for travel really need something that you wrote a while back because they have no content, so or photographed. Yeah, we can share this. We could actually just share a link to the PowerPoint right now. Let's see. Get me out of presenting mode. Excellent. We'll just share this link right now. I think that's easier, yeah. Cool. Okay. Hold on. Okay, now that problem is solved for sure. Okay. Any other questions? Cool. Okay. Yeah, feel free to connect, ask questions anytime. Obviously, like, this is our emails again and stuff. Yeah, this is just stuff we've learned. I feel like it's very complicated, so anything you learn, share with your community too. It's really hard to figure out this industry. Oh, another whoopsies. Sorry, y'all.
Oh dear.
At some point, this will work. But thank you for attending the presentation and yeah, the whole workshop. This was anyone with link.
Did you click copy link?
I think it should work now. Okay, well, someone let us know if that works.
Yeah.
I'll feel bad if it doesn't again.
Potentially should.
It works now.
Oh, thanks, Emily.
Beautiful.
Okay, cool. Oh, thanks, Hannah.
Hannah's the cool one.
But yeah, get on Instagram and let's keep this community going after this workshop. This was really fun. I enjoyed everyone's presentations. It's been cool. Good way to add something to the summer.
Yeah.